Good evening, everyone. So today we would do the next topic on dynamics, and that would be covering the curvilinear motion. And we are still in the domain of kinematics. So, which means that we do talk about uh, displacement, velocity, or speed, and acceleration, etc. While we do not talk about uh, the forces that cause these set of quantities. Okay, so we still don't talk about the forces. Okay, which also means we do not talk about uh, how much mass the particle has. We are still talking about the motion of a particle, and that too, in this case, we are doing planar curvilinear motion. Okay, so um, so imagine these are the Cartesian axis. Okay, and let's say this is the path of motion of the particle, and somewhere on that path is your is the particle itself. Okay, and let's say it is at a point P on the path, and after a time, so that is at time T, and yeah, so that is at time T, and after an incremental time del T plus delta T, so the particle moves to or would move to a different location. So that is at T plus delta T at a point P prime. Okay, so let's say this is a position vector of the particle at time t, and at p plus t plus delta t, it reaches over here, and this time its position vector is r prime, where r prime is r plus delta r. Okay, so delta r is your incremental displacement. Now now in the limit delta t tends to 0, delta r, you see, if I, instead of measuring the actual vector that represent displacement, for example, from P, if the particle were to move at a different location called Q, I would have this as the displacement. Okay, so that would be the delta R. Okay, but if but that is not the actual distance that the particle has moved, because the particle now is not moving on a straight line, it is moving on a curvilinear path, and let's say the actual displacement measured along the path is delta S, and in the limit uh, the time, I mean the incremental time delta t tends to 0, delta R magnitude is actually delta S. Okay, now we can define velocity, the instantaneous velocity, as limit delta t tends to 0, delta r divided by delta t, which is essentially dr dt, which is r dot. And if you are wondering what this quantity is, that quantity is simply the time derivative of each of the coordinates. Okay, so that's how we take derivative of a vector. Okay, and therefore it can be written as s dot times a unit vector, and that unit vector we'll call E hat times t. Now, what do I mean by E hat times t? E hat is the tangential unit vector. Okay, what I'm trying to refer here, if I could represent two orthogonal directions, one that is normal to the path and one that is tangential, so I'm talking about this unit vector. If you really think about it, in the limit delta t tends to 0, delta r aligns itself along the tangential direction, which is basically I'm drawing a tangent to the path at point P. Is it clear to everyone that in the limit delta t tends to 0, the incremental displacement delta r is actually tangential to the path? Is that clear?
Sir, can you please repeat once more?
Okay, so delta r, as you can see, is a vector. Okay, and delta s is actually the measured along the path. So always you see delta r magnitude is less than equals delta s. Okay, because the delta r is measured along a straight line. Okay, and since 2D plane is an Euclidean space, so on and so forth, therefore the straight line distance is actually smaller than the curvilinear distance. That's what that is. But if you really think about it, in the limit delta t tends to 0, okay, in a very small interval of time, this delta r is going to be really tiny. Okay, and let's say this is the exaggerated view of the path, and therefore this delta r is let's say, if it is going to be smaller and smaller, and in the end its magnitude is going to be same as this delta s, which is measured along the curvilinear path. Okay, so delta s is this distance between P and P prime, which is like this small arc around here. Okay, so this much is delta s, and as we discussed, that magnitude is going to be much higher. I mean, not much higher. That is always greater than or equal to delta r. And in the limit delta t tends to 0, they tend to one another. Okay, and therefore the speed part of the velocity is given by s dot. So this can be written as v times e hat t, where v, the magnitude of the velocity v, is basically the speed. So this is the speed, okay, and this is the velocity, and velocity therefore is the magnitude speed times a unit vector. And if you really think about it, this is what is a normal to the path at this location, and this is the tangential direction. Okay, and as delta t is smaller and smaller, this quantity, so is delta r, and therefore delta r basically aligns itself with the tangent. Okay, and because delta r aligns itself with the tangent, so this is basically delta r in the limit delta t tends to 0. Delta r is basically delta s times et. Okay, so that's why the direction of the velocity is tangential to the path. Does that make sense now? Are you comfortable now? The delta r aligns itself
Yes,
with
sir.
the tangent. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So So one thing to notice here, that if I am plotting, if I am plotting the position vectors, okay, the locus of the position vectors, or rather positions of the particle on a 2D plane, okay. So the tangent is the direction at any point. The tangent is the direction of the velocity, and the magnitude speed is essentially the indication how fast the particle moves through that location, okay. So that is indicated by the magnitude of the speed, that is, speed is a scalar, so that is indicated by the speed, but the direction itself is given by the tangent. So whenever you see that a particle, you know that the trajectory of the particle, you know at each point what was the direction of the velocity. That has to be the tangential one, okay. Now using the same logic, what I can construct now in a space called Vx Vy, okay, and this time each of the vectors about the origin is the velocities, okay. And if I simply plot, if I now take the velocity vectors, okay, at each and every location, let's say p, p prime, q, etc., and plot them in the Vx Vy plane, then I'll have a curve called hodograph. And can you tell me, let's say this time I'm calling this point as p hat, okay. Can you tell me, if I take a tangent to this curve, which is the hodograph, whose direction is it going to represent? So if you take any point on this curve, that
Sir,
actually is not the, yes,
sir, is it the direction of the acceleration of the particle?
yes. So this is actually the direction of the, so acceleration would be directed along the tangent in the hodograph, okay. So hodograph is not showing the actual positions of the particle, but it is showing that at any position, whatever is the velocity vector of the particle. So if you plot a graph with that, okay, a tangent to that graph would essentially represent at a point whatever is the direction of the acceleration, okay. So that is the the mathematical interest in describing a hodograph. So so the thing is, as we discussed earlier, we can analyze the motion of a particle in a curvilinear path using three different types of coordinate systems. So the one could be, of course, the Cartesian or rectangular, and the second thing could be your normal and tangential directions, okay. And I hope by now you are starting to see what is the advantage of using NT coordinate system, because you see in rectangular coordinate system, the V would have the following components, Vx and Vy. In NT coordinate system, V would simply look this, okay, because the tangential direction is what is the direction of the velocity, okay. And then there is the obvious polar coordinate system or the r theta coordinate system, okay. That also has certain advantages in certain scenarios, okay. And same thing applies to NT system, but today we would be concentrating on the rectangular coordinate system, the simplest coordinate system that we can comprehend, and that also has, because of its simplicity, has certain advantages, and in certain problems they are actually very useful. Okay, for example, today we'll be doing projectiles, so there it proves to be quite useful. Okay, um, so now we'll try to describe the important quantities such as the displacement, velocity, and acceleration. Okay, of a particle, uh, in a rectangular coordinate system. Okay? And you'll see that the representation is so simple. So we know that the position vector, again, the last curve is okay. We can actually retain the last curve. Okay. So
Sir,
yes,
sir, can you please tell once how the photograph is drawn?
how the holograph is drawn. Okay.
Yes,
So
sir.
let's say the particle travels for a time of 0 to 10 seconds. Okay. I'll be taking, let's say, small intervals of 0.1 seconds. So I'll have 101 such intervals, equally distant, equally distant time intervals. Okay, and at each, so let's say the time is 0, 0.1 up to 10. So at each of these time points, I can note the x and the, if I can actually track the particle, I can note the x and y coordinates of the particle at each of these times. When I, make a Cartesian vector out of this x and y, then I'll be having the position vectors. Okay. Now, instead of doing that, if I were to track the velocity, the x and the y component of the velocity, imagining that I I have that much of tracking capability, so therefore I'll be getting another vector, vx Cartesian vector, vy. It doesn't have to be Cartesian, but the Cartesian is the simplest one. So that way, I'll be having the velocity vector at each time interval or each instant of time. Okay, equally distant time points rather. Okay, equally distant time points. So I'll be having the velocity vector for equally distant time points. So now let's plot them. Actually, that is also how you would plot the position vectors themselves. So plot each of these velocity vectors. Let's say this is at 0, is v 0.1, and then this continues. Okay, join these points and you have your holograph. Does it make sense?
Yes, sir. I got it.
Okay. Have you heard about uh, finite difference method? Are you familiar with finite difference method?
No, sir.
Okay. Okay. So basically, that is a way of getting derivatives approximately. If you have the quantities themselves available at equal intervals of time, or let's say equal distance away along a given direction. Okay. All I'm trying to say here is
Sir, is
I
it
can.
similar to forward difference or backward difference method?
It's not similar. It's exactly that's what is finite difference method. Okay. But I was going to talk about central
Then, sir,
difference
I
method.
have studied.
Yes, sir. We
Okay.
have then done it that.
We
Yeah,
have then
right.
studied.
So that's what I was talking about. The point is that if you have the x and the y coordinates, there are ways for you to get the at least the approximate values of vx and vy. Okay, and if you take this time interval sufficiently small, those approximate values are going to be pretty accurate. Okay, at least as long as you are taking central difference. You know that, right? Central difference is way more accurate than forward and backward difference.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's try to write the position vector. Let's start with the position vector and let's try to write it in the Cartesian components. Okay. So this right here is of course the x coordinate, and this right here is the y coordinate. And as the Cartesian representation goes, the position vector is given by x I and yj. One thing to notice that in Cartesian representation or the rectangular representation, the unit vectors are constants. So we have constant unit vectors. Okay. Had the unit vectors not been constant, then when I would be trying to take a derivative of the vector itself, the position vector itself, I'll also have to consider a situation where I'll have to take derivative of the unit vectors themselves. How we can take the derivative of unit vectors, that we'll learn in the possibly in the next part of today's class, or even in the next class. But for right now, we don't have to bother about taking the derivative of the position vectors. That's the greatest advantage with the Cartesian coordinate system. So it essentially is this quantity x dot I plus y dot j. Okay, and I hope you understand what I mean by x dot. So x dot is essentially dx dt. Okay, now can you tell me how much is so this quantity right here is vx, and this quantity right here is vy. Now we can just extend this process and get the acceleration, and there is no that is not a very difficult job. It's really simple. But before going there, I need you to do this. Do Vy by Vx. If you do this, what do you get?
So then we will get the angle with the x-axis in the hodograph
No.
at point T.
I just want to get the expression for this one. I'm not interested in what quantity this is. I just want to get the expression for this one. If x dot is represented like this, which is basically Vx, okay, what is Vy to Vx, that ratio?
So then it will be essentially
slope of
dy
that
dx. Dy dx.
Slope of that point.
Dy dx, okay,
Yes, sir.
which basically means it is by the way, what is Vy to Vx? It is like if I represent the velocity vector like this, okay, and that makes an angle of theta with the horizontal. So that is actually the tan theta, okay. And what is dy dx? Dy dx is essentially, as we discussed earlier. So no, we didn't discuss this part. Dy dx, as you know, is the slope of the curve at that point. Okay, so basically, what do I mean by slope? That even for that line, if I were to take an angle theta with the horizontal, so that tan theta would be essentially dy dx. Okay, so this right here is dy to dx, which basically means that the other thing that we just proved, that the velocity vector itself is tangential to the curve, that can be directly seen from here, because the slope of the velocity vector, okay, or the angle that it makes with the horizontal, is the same angle that the tangent would make, tangent to the curve at that particular point would make with the horizontal. Okay, Acha. So the next part is, of course, the acceleration, and the acceleration is also simple. It is simply Vx dot I plus Vy dot j, which is x double dot I plus y double dot j. Okay. Now, the particle itself may be going through an actual curvilinear motion. Okay. But if you really think about what its x and y coordinates are doing, the x and the y coordinates of the motion, okay, the actual particle is, let's say, moving along this green curve, which is the path, right? But its x and y coordinates themselves, okay, are actually performing rectilinear motion. Actual motion is curvilinear, but we'll just see that we are going to get very familiar set of expressions, Okay, out of what we have just got. Okay, the when we represent the motion in Cartesian coordinate system, when we represent the curvilinear motion in the Cartesian coordinate system, then the individual components of the motion, individual components of the coordinate, they themselves perform rectilinear motion. Okay, what I'm trying to say here is, as you can see, this ax right here is x double dot, which is dvx dt. Okay, and that can be written as dvx dx times dx dt, which is essentially vx dvx dx, which tells you that ax dx is vx dvx, and that's the familiar expression from rectilinear motion. I mean, you can also do that for the y coordinate. The point being that the individual coordinates themselves are actually performing rectilinear motion. Okay, although when you represent the motion in Cartesian coordinate system. Okay, so that is the second important result for the Cartesian coordinate system. Okay, so you can actually independently treat the motion in each coordinate, although the motion of the particle is coupled. Okay, the motion, the actual path of the curve is generated by both the coordinates, but you can, individually study the motion in each coordinate. It's as if the particle has while going from p to p prime, let's say the particle has moved along this much from p to p vertically, and this much horizontally, okay, to reach from p to q, p to p prime, let's say. Okay, but that's not the case, right? The particle actually directly moves from p to p prime. Okay, of course on a curved path, but it doesn't do this horizontal and the vertical part, or rather the vertical and the horizontal part, right? But you can independently study each coordinate. Okay. So these important results, along with this set of expressions, okay, we'll proceed for solving problems. So let's look at the first problem. Uh, so imagine this is a situation with okay, with the gravity, okay, which basically means the acceleration due to gravity is this quantity right here. Okay, so you know the x and the y coordinate. So so in this case, let's say u is 100 100 meters per second, and you have this distance. You have to, you are firing, let's say, a cannon from A, and that cannonball must reach point B. Okay. Now, can you determine at which angle must the cannonball be released in order to reach point B over there? Okay. Uh, so so actually this is in this case you will get two values for theta. That's why there are theta 1 and theta 2. Okay. And this is how we address that problem. So let's say this is the initial velocity v0, so that has v0x I plus v0 y j. These are the components. Okay. And then this v0x would be your v0x would be your 100 cos theta, if the theta is the angle that you assume. Okay. And this quantity right here would be 100 sine theta meter per second. Okay. Now the acceleration in horizontal direction is 0, and in the vertical direction it is minus 9.8 meter per second squared. So in the end, the x distance is v0x times t. Okay. And you do not know how much is that time t. So but you know how much is the x, which is 5,000 meter. Okay. So from this actually you can get the expression for t, that would be 5,000 divided by 100 cos theta. Okay. So 50 by cos theta is the duration. Okay. And in that duration you are supposed to travel 1500 along y, and you can right away use whatever equation you have learned for projectile. So basically it is v0y times t minus half into 9.8 into t squared. Okay. So in this case again, if you take v0y, you are going to have one sine theta component. Okay. So it would be 100 times 50 times tan theta, and over here it would be half into 9.8 into 50 to the power 2 times sec square theta, because it is 1 by cos theta. So that you can write as 1 plus tan square theta, and this would give you a quadratic equation in tan theta. And once you solve that quadratic equation, you will get two different values of tan theta, giving you the two different values of theta. Okay. So do you think this problem can be solved? Are you trying to get the tan theta?
Yes, sir. Just 1 second.
Okay.
Sir, I am getting 16.72 degree.
Okay, there would be another value, right?
Yes, sir. And it will be 90 minus that value.
Okay. Okay, so I think you can solve it on your own. Uh, Now let's go for the problem number two. So this is problem number one, and this one is problem number two. So this airplane right here was, in its trajectory, it was at point A, it was moving with a velocity of 300 kilometer per hour. So you can say that the V0 is 300 kilometer per hour. So that can be directly converted to meter per second by dividing with 3.6. Okay, so it is moving with that speed. Okay, and makes an angle of 45 degree with the horizontal. So uh, and at that point package was released. Okay, a package was released from the airplane. So basically the package, that is to give you the hint that the package was actually moving with the velocity of the, or the speed of the airplane itself. Okay, so the initial velocity for the package is this much, and that makes an angle of 45 degree with the horizontal. Okay, now while the when the aeroplane released the package, it was at a height of 500 meter. Okay, so the, if the package has to reach ground, it has to fall by 500 meters. And the question is, how much distance does the package travel in the horizontal direction? Okay, so so the horizontal distance should be, this is how we get it. So we would get the x and the y component of this thing. So it would be 300. So whatever that v0 is, it is going to be v0 divided by root 2. That way you get the horizontal and the vertical component. And let's say t is the time taken for the package to travel that distance. So so therefore s should be t times vx0, because again the acceleration ax is 0 and ay is minus 9.8 meter per second squared. Okay, and then you have this expression. So the package has to fall up by 500 meters. Now the package, of course, initially rises by some height, but in the end it has to fall by 500 meters. So you can write it as minus 500. Okay, so so starting from point A, it has to fall by 500 meters. So you can write minus 500, then v0y times t. Okay, this time you are supposed to directly put t, because v0y is something that you know, minus 1 by 2 g times t squared. Okay, so g of course is 9.8 meter per second squared. Okay, so this again forms a quadratic equation in time, and that quadratic equation, once you solve, we'll get two different values of t. Now can you make any prediction which one of those values should you take? So if you use this equation, okay, uh, as you can see, once I take this 500 to the right hand side, I'll be having, or if I take all of these things in the one side, so I'll be getting 1 by 2 gt squared minus v0 yt minus 500 equals 0, which basically means one of the solutions of t should be greater than 0, the other one should be less than 0. Because you see, this sign right here is negative. So one of the quantities would be positive, the other one is negative. And the negative actually would indicate that in past, if the the particle were to have that condition, or the particle were to have that velocity at a with that inclination, and if it were actually released from ground, okay, then in past it was in ground at certain time t before the release at a, okay. So it would make a prediction of a past that never happened, okay. So you'll get t less than 0, okay. So that is something you shouldn't take. You should take the positive value of t. Of course, the moment you see a negative value, you'd be discarding that. But this is the explanation for the negative value is that for the information that you have provided to your mathematical tool, it can also predict a situation that it was released in past from the ground itself, and moving on a projectile at a, it happened to have that velocity and that angle 45-degree with the horizontal. Okay, so this also you can solve, right? Okay, so
Sir, I am getting 21.35 seconds.
okay, what is the value of the other one?
Sir, let me check once. Sir, it is coming minus 4.68.
Okay. Okay, this seems reasonable. I'm not sure whether it is correct or not, but seems reasonable. Okay, so now we will address the other two problems. So question number 3, let me check what is the problem statement here. Okay, so this is how the problem statement goes. So this V0 right here is, let's say, 100 meter per second, and this alpha right here is 30-degree. Okay, so the question is, what is the maximum value of the range, and what is the theta for that R max? What is the corresponding value of theta? Okay, so of course the range is a function of theta. Okay. And and the question is, what theta would give you the maximum R and what is that maximum R? Basically, these two are the questions. Okay. And I can tell you that at least half of you are still, in the domains of twice u0 sine theta cos theta divided by g. What is that expression? You're still, in the thinking of this line. You are thinking in this line, okay, which is applicable to uh, horizontal problem. So when you are releasing the particle on a horizontal plane, that's when this is when this is plane AB itself is horizontal, that's when that relation should be valid. Um, so so we cannot simply use that expression anyway. Okay, so for this problem we'll have to get our own set of equations. Okay, so this angle with the horizontal is theta, which gives us the x and the y component. So Vx0 is 100 cos theta, or V0 cos theta, and Vy0 is 100 sine theta. Okay, and okay, and let's say it took a
Sir,
time of, yes.
sir, if I take the x-axis along AB and the perpendicular to AB the y-axis,
Hmm.
then I can solve it in another way. So can I solve it in that way?
Yeah, you are free to also solve it in that way, but you'll have to remember the acceleration would be different.
Yes, sir. Then in the x-axis it will be g cos 60, and y-axis it will be g sin 60.
I believe it would be reverse. Okay, so if you take this one as the x
It,
coordinate, okay, so yeah, you said cos 60, right? Yeah, so it is, that would be correct. So I was thinking in terms of sine 30. Yeah, so it would be cos 60 along x, and sine 60 along y, and so on, both negative, which is correct. So you can try it on that way, but then you will be having acceleration term on either of them. So now see,
because then, sir, we will get one advantage, because the displacement along the y-axis will be eventually zero, and it will be some advantageous for me.
sorry, which quantity would be zero?
Sir, if I take the y-axis
Displacement along
perpendicular to the,
y-axis should be zero. Okay,
yes, sir.
okay. But let's see, if I do it in the global Cartesian, so I can write r cos theta equals v0x times simply t, and then I have sorry, cos alpha, r sine alpha equals v0y times t minus half g t squared. Okay, and I do not know r, but from these two I'll get a relation, uh, tan alpha equals tan alpha equals first of v0y to v0x is basically tan theta minus 1 by 2 1 by 2 g t divided by v0x. Okay. And from that, you can get an expression for t, right? T as a function of theta. And your r cos alpha would be v0x times this t.
So what is the answer?
I don't have the answer.
So it is 60 degrees. Theta equal to 60.
I mean, let's say if alpha is not given, okay. So can you try to calculate, without knowing the alpha? So see, this alpha angle is fixed, okay. So whatever maximizes r cos alpha also maximizes r sin alpha, right?
So theta is equal to 90 plus alpha by 2 I am getting.
It turned out to be how much? 90 plus alpha by 2. Is it?
Yes, sir. Sir, I am getting
Which
it.
seems, so that's what is theta according to you, which seems legitimate, because if you substitute alpha equals 0, this turns out to be 45 degree, right? So you can, use that relation, okay. So now your goal is to maximize this t, because see, this v0x is a constant, this cos alpha is a constant. So all you have to do to maximize r is to maximize t, okay. And that t you'd get from here. Again, that t is something like tan theta minus tan alpha divided by 1 by 2 g divided by v0x. Now all of these quantities are again constants. So all you have to do is is this how you are getting it? V0, no. One problem. V0x is V0 times cos theta. Okay. So V0x is not a constant. Okay. So V0 times cos theta. Yeah. So if you use that cos theta, over here, so that basically gives you sine theta cos alpha minus cos theta sine alpha divided by cos alpha to maximize. So again, cos alpha is a constant, so this means you need to maximize sine
Sir, I am getting 3 alpha by 2. Theta equals to.
no, I think it would be sine of theta minus alpha divided by cos alpha. Okay, so you need to maximize this, and then you get sine of therefore you have theta minus alpha equals pi by 2. I'm sure I'm missing something. So theta equals alpha plus pi by 2 or something. So what am I missing?
Sir, can you please once do in my method what I have told, that taking x-axis along AB, because sir I am getting also 3 alpha by 2 and I am not finding any error in my calculations.
It should not be 3 alpha by 2. What I recall, it has something to do with it would be something like alpha by 2, pi by 2 or something, pi by 4 or something. So what I recall, that is what the solution should be. So so simply dividing either side with r cos alpha. So here you have tan alpha, and this thing v0y to v0x would be tan theta, and over here you have this quantity right here. So tan theta cos theta.
Yes sir, I have got pi by 4 plus alpha by 2.
Pi by 4 plus alpha by 2, but that would mean that would be 2 theta, right? This expression
No sir.
equals to 2 theta.
No sir, I am getting theta equals to, yes sir, in your equation it will be 2 theta.
Why is there a mismatch? Is this incorrect over here? Is this expression incorrect? Oh, is that so? So it is v0 x times t. So when I divide the whole expression with v0 x times t, over here it simply becomes tan theta. Here, okay, so one t survives, then the other one becomes something like this. Okay, so this one is v0x t, v0y t, half gt squared. So you have your tan alpha equals tan theta minus 1 by 2 times g times t squared divided by v0 cos theta times t. So 1 t will cancel out. Then you have tan theta minus tan alpha times 2 v0 cos theta divided by g, that equals to t. And you need to maximize this t because yes.
Sir, if I think about the equation r sin alpha equals to v0 by t minus half gt square, so then and here I want to maximize the r, and r is a function of t which is quadratic function. So I
Mhm.
can't tell that if I maximize the t, then the value of r will be maximized, because I will have to take the derivative with respect to t and put it to 0.
No, then you need to think in this way. This quantity right here is not a constant. Okay, so this involves theta.
No sir, I am telling that
So you are
we
saying
have
that
got.
if you substitute this t
Yes sir,
to this
then we will.
expression,
Yes sir, then we will get the equation with respect to theta, and we will do the derivative with respect to theta and put it to 0.
you can do that. But you know, this also applies over here. This equation also, that is true, right? Whatever expression you get for t, you can substitute to the first equation. Okay, and whatever maximizes r cos alpha should maximize r. Okay, so that's what you did. You substituted that expression to r sine alpha.
Yes sir, and I took the derivative with respect to theta.
Okay, and that told you that it is alpha by 2 plus pi by 4, right? Which
Yes
is the
sir.
correct answer. Hmm. But I'm still wondering why it is not. I mean, that way you can of course do, but I'm still wondering why it is not coming to be true with. Oh, I got it. I got it. So you see, r cos alpha is v0 x times t. So not only do you have to maximize t, you will have to maximize this quantity multiplied to v0 cos theta. Okay, so then you have 2 by g v0 squared, 2 by g v0 squared. Okay, cos square theta times tan theta minus tan alpha. So you'll have to maximize this quantity. Okay, and what is that quantity? So first of all, this quantity is sine theta cos theta minus cos square theta by tan alpha. So now if I also take this 2 over here, that is sine 2 theta, and this quantity is cos 2 theta plus 1, right? If I multiply with 2, so I'll have to maximize this quantity, which is of course there is minus 1 by tan alpha, but again alpha is a constant. Then I'm left with 1 by cos alpha sine 2 theta cos alpha minus cos 2 theta sine alpha. Okay, so it's actually sine 2 theta minus alpha should be maximized, which means 2 theta minus alpha is pi by 2, and therefore theta equals alpha by 2 plus pi by 4. You realize what is happening here? If I multiply cos squared theta to tan theta, it simply becomes sine theta cos theta. I'll take this 2 from here, and that would be sine 2 theta. This cos squared no, it's not division, it's times tan alpha. This tan alpha times cos squared theta can be written as cos 2 theta plus 1, because there is a multiplication of 2 times tan alpha. Okay, now tan alpha, is a constant because alpha is a constant. So I'm left with this exercise, okay, where I have sine 2 theta minus alpha, which needs to be maximized. Okay, and there actually you can also, so the derivative part, that also you can do over here. So I forgot to include the cos theta from v0x. It's not v0x which is constant, it is v0 which is constant. Okay, so if you do that, you'll get this value of theta, and that you can substitute in one of the expressions, r cos alpha maybe. So that should give you the correct value of the maximum range. Okay. Is this clear to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So now we'll target the last problem, and in the last problem we have something called a drag force, or viscous drag involved. Okay, so that bullet that is fired from the bottom of the tank, moving on a gravitational field, which is to say there is an acceleration due to gravity of this much. Okay, so let's say it has been released from with an initial velocity v0 equals 100 meter per second, and theta as 45 degree. Okay, with which this bullet has been fired. Now the now there is acceleration due to gravity, and that would act on the body. That would be the sole acceleration on the body if the body were to move on vacuum, or even approximately that would be the acceleration if it were to move on air. But if it is inside a viscous fluid, substantially viscous fluid, therefore you have the following expression for the acceleration due to drag force, okay, which is minus kb. So you understand what is happening here. It is proportional to the direction of the velocity, which basically means it has both x and y components. Okay, so let's say k is 10 to the power minus 4 per second. Okay, so now you'll have to do this. You'll have to write the ax and ay components. Okay, so ax is minus k times vx. So it actually opposes the motion. So whatever is the direction of the velocity, it is acting opposite to that. And this one right here is minus g minus kvy. Okay. So the question is, write x and y as functions of time. Okay, where the position vector is given as okay. Can you do this one?
Sir, can you once tell what we have to do actually?
Yeah, you will have to get the functional form of x and y. So x and y are functions of time. You need to write them as functions of time. Please note the accelerations themselves are given as so for, let's say, y component, there is a constant term g, and then there is a term that is dependent on the velocity, y component of the velocity. Okay, so when you do integrate this and get the acceleration, okay, so so that would not be true simple integration. So sorry, when you get the displacement from the acceleration, that would not be just a simple integration, because you if it were only g, it would be like half gt squared, but that is not the case here. Okay, so you also have the initial velocity v0, so you'll have to get the expression for x and y. For instance, if we start with, let's say, the x component of velocity, so vx dot is minus k vx, which is to say that dvx dx sorry dvx divided by vx is minus k dt, and when you integrate that between 0 to t, you get v0x to v, which is to say that ln of vx to vx0 equals minus kt, or in other words, vx is v0x into e to the power minus kt. Okay, because I'm doing definite integrals, I shouldn't be bothered about constants of integration. And then I can proceed further to get x itself. So that is like x dot. Okay, so v0x, of course, is a constant because it's the initial velocity. So, or dx dt. So I can take it from here. Why does it become negative? It shouldn't be, right?
So
Sir,
it will be 1 minus e ka power minus kt by k.
Sorry?
So it will be 1 minus e ka power minus kt by k after putting the limits.
Yeah. Okay.
sir,
So you are saying it is going to be e to the power minus kt minus 1, right? So of course this quantity is smaller than 1. So we have this expression. Right?
Yes, sir.
Sir,
Yes,
sir, here why we are taking v0x as a constant? Oh, sorry, sorry,
V0x
sir,
is a
sorry, sir,
constant because
sorry, sir. I got it.
theta is given. In the previous problem, theta was something you were supposed to determine.
Yes, sir. That's why because I confused.
Yeah, yeah, I understand. Okay, so I believe you can do the y component as well. It would be slightly more complicated, but nothing to be bothered about. Okay, so um you can expect such problems in when you are dealing with Cartesian coordinate system for curvilinear motion. Mostly problems involving projectile. Okay, so with that, let's move on to normal and tangent coordinate system. So this is the path. That's where the particle is at P. Okay, and as we discussed earlier, that we can define two directions. This one is ET, and this one is EN. Okay, EN is normal to the path, and ET is tangential. Okay, and let's say the position vector of P is this one, R right here. And let's talk about another position of the particle after an interval of time delta t. It might seem like I'm doing the same exercise, which I am, but it is slightly different than what we did last time. So this one is r prime, and the difference between r prime and r is this delta r right here. So, so as we discussed earlier, limit delta t tends to 0. Delta r is basically delta s times et. Okay, and even at p, so that point is called p prime, and even at p prime, I can define another set of normal and tangent coordinate system, and that's what happens with normal and tangent coordinate systems. Okay, they keep on changing orientations. So this thing is en prime. Okay, and if that delta r is really small, if delta t is really small, so I can actually extend this en prime and en right here, and they would meet somewhere, which can be regarded as the instantaneous center of rotation. And this uh, and the distance from that center of rotation, instantaneous center of rotation, to p or p prime, let's say, is given by rho, which is kind of the radius of curvature of the path. Okay, so rho is the, not kind of, it is actually the radius of curvature at P. Okay, C is the instantaneous center of rotation, and let's say that subtends an angle of d beta. This motion itself subtends an angle of not d beta, I should be calling it delta beta, okay, about the center of curvature. Okay, so in the limit delta t tends to 0, this delta beta is also d beta, okay, differential angle, which is to say that this delta t tends to 0, delta s is rho times d beta, or limit delta t tends to 0, delta r is rho d beta et. Okay, so the velocity vector is r dot, which is s dot et, where s could also be written as v, the speed. I'm just trying to write multiple representation of the same quantity, which could also be written as rho beta dot et. Okay. Now it's not a lot of time that we use that beta dot, okay, but but this representation, the importance of this representation would be clear in a minute. Number one, and number two, please note that the velocity can be represented using a single direction. We are not showing that En and Et, that is two orthogonal directions. Just one direction is sufficient, which is the tangential direction, which is also the advantage of the NT coordinate system. Now what happens when we try to get the acceleration, which would be the rate of change of velocity, which is in one part s double dot et, but you'll have to realize that this et is not a constant, which is to say that it also comes with s dot ddt of et, okay, or this whole quantity can be called et dot. Okay, so now we should know how to take derivative of this et. To do that, let's plot et. Now, what is the length of et?
Sir, 1.
1, like, right? This is a unit vector. What is the length of En? Once again, that is 1. Now let's try plotting et prime, which is the the tangential direction at p prime. Basically, it means it makes an angle of d beta with et, and same thing happens to En prime. Okay. Now En prime, Et prime, En, Et, all of these are unit vectors. So the length of each of them is how much? 1, right? And when I show them about a okay, I shouldn't be showing them about O. If this is O, let's call it A, right? So if I take a center at A and take all of those unit vectors, basically I can plot a circular arc through them. Okay, because all of these are unit vectors, basically they have the same length. Now this vector right here, there is a small vector, that is actually d et vector, differential change in unit vector. Okay, of course with unit vector that there is no change in magnitude. Okay, so the differential changes are actually what you will learn is happening normal to the vector itself. Now you see this is a differential quantity, when that is implied that this delta t is this time very tiny, and in a situation like that it is actually you know, it is actually tangential to the this circular arc. Okay, now this might sound a little bit of ironic. This det is tangential to this arc. Okay, which means it is tangential to et, because et is actually the radius of the arc at this point, which means this det is actually proportional to en, because en is normal to et. Now that's the unit vector part of det. Det is not a unit vector, it's a differential quantity, but so it has a magnitude and a unit vector. So the unit vector is the normal direction. Now how much is the length of det? If delta t is really tiny, which is dt now, then the differential time is really small, which is small because it is differential. So the length of et is nothing but the arc length, you know, the length of the circular arc between et and et prime, and that would be d beta times the radius of this circular arc. And how much is the radius of this circle? This circle, which comprises of all the 4 unit vectors, what is the radius of this circle?
Sir,
Yes.
sir, here we are taking the derivative of the et cap,
Yes.
and the magnitude of the et is not changing. Only the direction of et is changing, but I got confused why it is en cap coming in the direction of the derivative.
Okay. You see.
Is it, sir? Sir, is it the normal?
One second. Just one second. When I draw it in an exaggerated form, it doesn't look like it. But if you really think about it, if this d beta angle is really tiny, okay, so this differential change in et would actually be tangential to the circular arc, which is to say that basically it would, if I really zoom into the circular arc, okay, and let's say that this is where et is, and if I take a really tiny det like this, so first of all the length of det would be same as the arc length, okay, if it is differential, and also the direction would be tangential to the curve itself. If you take smaller and smaller d beta angle, okay, so let's say this much is et prime and this much is d beta. Now d beta tends to 0, so which is to say that this quantity right here is going to be tangential to the circular arc. Now a tangent to a circular arc is normal to the radius, and in this case that radius is et. So what is normal to et? En is normal to et. Therefore this et is along en. Okay, but what about the magnitude of det? Because det is not a unit vector, it's a differential quantity, so its magnitude is the arc length. Now how do you measure the arc length along a circle? It's simply the radius times the differential angle. Now the differential angle is d beta, but how much is the radius?
So it is 1.
1. So this tells you that et dot is simply beta dot en. Okay, so this quantity is double dot et plus, you can substitute the expression for s dot, or you can substitute for beta dot. Beta dot is s dot divided by rho, or you see v divided by rho. V is the speed, or s dot, the scalar part of the velocity. So this quantity right here is beta dot en, or therefore this quantity is en times v squared divided by rho. So s dot times s dot divided by rho. So v squared divided by rho. So now you have two components of the acceleration. One is a tangential component. The other one is a normal component. Okay. Velocity had only one component, which was the tangential one. Now the acceleration has two components. And if you notice carefully, the acceleration an, okay, is always greater than 0. But something tells you if you had taken en in this direction, you would get a negative an. That's why there is a convention on how you choose the unit vector along the normal. The unit vector along the normal should always point towards the instantaneous center of rotation. It should be always inwards. Okay, the the normal vector should always be inwards. You cannot take the outward one. Okay, which means that en is not in general k cross et. Okay, so if it were k cross et, it would be always pointing positive 90 degrees. But if the path actually arced into right hand side, let's say this is the instantaneous center of rotation. If this is your et, your en this time actually points towards right hand side, and therefore there is a clockwise rotation instead of a counterclockwise rotation. Taking a cross product with k with mean there is a counterclockwise rotation. Okay, if you take k cross et, you get a counterclockwise rotation. Okay, but that's not the case in general with en. Okay, en can be both k cross et or minus k cross et, depending on which side is the center of curvature. Okay, one more thing that I want to add. Acha, is this part clear? Just to put a closure to what we just discussed about the taking derivative of a unit vector. Let's say this quantity right here is the differential en. Now, in normal and tangential coordinate system, we do not need the derivative of en. But if I were to take this differential en, that is actually parallel to minus et. That is directed along minus et. Okay, and of course the arc length is the same. It is 1 times d beta, which is to say that en dot is beta dot times minus et. Not that we need that in our expression for acceleration, but that is still there. Okay. Now imagine a particle moves on a path like this. Okay. Now, when it is between A and B, okay, and imagine it is gradually accelerating. What I mean by that is double dot is greater than 0. So all I'm trying to say here is its tangential component of the acceleration is greater than 0. Okay. So this is what its tangential component of the acceleration would look like. Okay. Because it is along the positive tangent. Now, from its curvature, actually, you can figure out what should be the direction of its normal component of the acceleration. It would be something like this, am, and that would give you a resultant acceleration, which would point somewhat towards, towards the left. Okay. If I were to take the position of the particle somewhere over here, so in that case again, it has a positive tangential component of the acceleration, and then the normal component would be acting in this direction. I don't know the magnitude of either of them, but the resulting acceleration would be pointing towards the right. Okay, but whenever the curvature is flat, or let's say the radius of curvature is infinite, okay, so in that case there is only the tangential component of acceleration, and that is how it looks like. Okay. And whenever on the path there is such a point, let's say point B in this example, when the curvature is 0, so at that point, the acceleration is parallel to the path, and that point is called the point of contraflexure or point of inflection. Okay. Now you can find such a point even when the particle is gradually decelerating. Okay. Same S-shaped path and same 3 points. Okay. Now imagine if the particle is somewhere over here and it is gradually decelerating, so its tangential component of the acceleration is pointing in this way, and its normal component of the acceleration is of course towards the center of rotation, instantaneous center of rotation. So this is what the resulting direction of acceleration is. And similarly, when it is between B and C, it will have an acceleration which would look something like this. But at point B, the acceleration would be somewhat like this. Okay, because B is the point of contraflexure. Okay, so that's all we need to cover in relation to the theory of normal and tangential coordinate system. Okay, and we really don't have enough time to cover problems today, so we will do that in the next class, and the next class would be on next Monday. Okay, তোমাদের 7 তারিখ অবধি থিওরি ক্লাস হবে, তাই তো?
স্যার অ্যাকচুয়ালি এটা ব্যাপারে আমরা জানি না, মানে 11th আগস্ট থেকে সেম আছে বলে।
7th তোমাদের সেশন ডিসলভ হওয়ার কথা না? 7th
স্যার অ্যাকচুয়ালি ওই একাডেমিক ক্যালেন্ডারটা আমাদের কাছে নেই, মানে এক্সাক্ট টাইমিংসটা জানি না, শুধু 11th আগস্ট থেকে।
হ্যাঁ, আমি যতদূর জানি 7th, তবে যদি 7 নাও হয়, আমার নেক্সট উইকের ক্লাস it will be over by 4th. Okay, মানে next Wednesday is 4th. Okay, so next week I'm planning on covering the entire kinematics, and on next Monday and I mean the remaining part of kinematics. And on Wednesday, we'll cover the kinetics. Okay, and I